Hello, everybody, and welcome to our latest Business Spotlight interview, where we have got a very interesting guest here this evening, from a career, a potential career in golfing to the family business and multiple businesses now in the catering world. So, before we get into the questions, my name's Gary Hales. I'm with Action Coach in the Dorset area, and delighted to be participating again on one of these interviews. So I guess we'll get straight into it then, Joshua, and tell us about yourself, your business, who you are, and then we'll follow from there.
Cool. Well, thanks for inviting me on, firstly. Going right back to the start of my journey, I grew up in London, went to school in London, and my father and my grandfather and uncle were in the fashion industry, grew a big company across the UK called Mark One. They came out of that when I was about 14 or 15, and my father went into the restaurant business in southwest London. He had 3 or 4 restaurants there. So I did some work for him whilst I was at school at the weekends and got to grips with kind of what hospitality was all about. I mean, the industry was new to him as well, so he was sort of learning as he went. So it was quite a roller coaster ride, to put it lightly. At the same time, as you mentioned, I was an aspiring golfer. I kind of won the county under-18s championships and represented England and Great Britain at under-18 level, and had my heart set on kind of turning professional and having a life as a golf pro. We ended up moving to Bournemouth when I was around 18. My dad opened some restaurants down here at that point. And for one reason or another, I decided golf wasn't going to be my future, and got straight into business with my dad. Went in and worked at his restaurants. I then wanted to open nightclubs. My dad backed me to open our first nightclub when I was 21, which was a roaring success. Looking back, sold that when I was around 23. And then from the age of 23 to sort of 30, we took some big financial risks, opened some big venues, much of which was my idea. We opened up nightclubs here. We opened up a nightclub in Barbados, which is a whole other story. And essentially, it all went crashing down, and we lost everything. There was initially the 2008, 2009 financial crisis. We then obviously went again, tried to go international, decided that nightclubs weren't the future for us, sold our nightclub in Barbados, came back to Bournemouth. At which point I made the decision to kind of move away from the family business and met my business partner, who I'm still in business with now, Steve Crawford. He was actually a customer of ours through the nightclubs and restaurants in town, so got to know him and his friends. We've had various businesses together, and obviously over the last 10 years have been growing Chicken and Blues, and most recently Flamingo Cafe Bars under the umbrella of Avery Hospitality Group, and that's where we focus our attentions now.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for that. A good run through. So let's dive into the sticky stuff first. So what did you learn from the crashes of 2008 and 9, and when you said everything fell apart?
Well, I think we basically overexposed ourselves with debt. Debt can be good debt, but it can also be a huge liability if you can't service it. And we over leveraged to open up some multi-million pound, capex venues, who all of which were trading well. But when it came to servicing the debts during the crisis in 2008, 2009, interest rates went up. Banks started calling their debts in, especially in high risk industries like hospitality, restaurants, and clubs. And cross guaranteed against private properties, etc. And they pulled the plug, and we lost everything. So I would say that the lesson learned was be careful how you leverage debt, because if it does go wrong, you can get caught short, as we found out. And be a bit careful with risk taking. I mean, we were a little bit flamboyant, to put it lightly, with how successful we assumed we were going to be. And like I say, if the numbers don't stack up, it doesn't matter how busy your venues are. If you can't service large debt, then you can find yourself in a spot of bother.
Yeah. And then your journey, obviously you were in the family business and then you moved out. I've coached a few family businesses over my time, fathers and sons, etc. And it has its own challenges. What sort of challenges did you face in a family business, and how did you overcome them?
Well, looking back on it, I would say that it had its good points and its bad points. I think when things are going well, that's the good points, because obviously as a family, Everything's very positive. You know, you're planning some exciting projects for the future, and everything's pretty rosy. When things go wrong, you know, Sunday lunch can become a bit of a problem, because, you know, even over your kind of, you know, your family gatherings, it's all about business. You know, everyone's involved in the problems, and everyone has an opinion, and you know, you can find yourself not enjoying family life really. And what I've grown up in the family business for my father, and we had some great times, and I learned a hell of a lot even from the problems that we had, which I've carried through now to my current businesses. But yeah, I mean, it's good and bad. I speak to lots of people I know that are in family businesses, and they're going through the same things that I used to go through. I've got friends that would never even entertain working with their family, and I kind of go, well, yeah, fair play, you know. So some are great, some aren't. We had some fantastic years, and I think we get on a lot better now as a family that we're not in business together. It's you know, a bit more normality than always talking about money, which is devil, as they say.
Excellent. Yeah, when you ran through your sort of bio there, Josh, you talked about businesses in Barbados and Chicken and Blues and Flamingo and all these different things. How have you sort of managed the time? How have you sort of kept that sort of work-life balance?
Not particularly well. I think if you speak to many entrepreneurs, the kind of work-life balance conversation arises. No, I don't think anyone's really worked out exactly how to do it best. I don't really see it as a work-life balance per se. I'm not the kind of person that can, you know, turn off at 5 p.m. and then spend time with the family and not think about work. If I've got work to do, I need to get that work done. It might take me till midnight. So I think it's more of a priority swing. So there might be days or weeks where work takes priority because I've got a big body of work to complete and it needs total focus. And then there'll be days, weeks, or even months where family takes precedent, and for whatever reason. I mean, we had one of our, you know, my mother-in-law passed away last year. So for the next 6 weeks, I did no work whatsoever and prioritized family. You know, so other times business has been tough or very exciting, needs total focus for 4 or 6 weeks, and my wife doesn't really see me. So it's not a case of a daily balance. It's more just a priority swing across, you know, phases of work, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. And when you look at Avery Hospitality, looking at it from a business point of view, strategic point of view, you know, you've got a couple of businesses in there. You know, have you sort of worked on a business plan? Is this all being designed? Or has it all happened by default rather than design? Have you got an idea and a strategy all in place?
I think our strategy has come together over the course of, you know, 10 years. If you told us in year one where we'd be now, you know, we didn't have a 10-year battle plan. I think when you open a new business, you're fighting fire with fire. In the first 2 or 3 years, it's kind of establishment and survival. And then you see where you go for phase two. And we got to a stage now where we have pretty clear objectives for both of our brands, pretty clear goals as to what we want to achieve with them. But, you know, it's fluid. You know, business plans are pretty fluid. I mean, the pandemic was a, you know, good example of how business plans can get thrown out of a window. You know, you can have some great intentions and some really black and white plans, but they're all flexible and fluid. And even this year, we've got, you know, our Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 objectives, but we know we get to Q2, Q3, things will have been dropped off, other things will be introduced. But yeah, it's nice to have some form of plan, but be fluid with it.
Obviously, the hospitality industry got hit very badly by COVID. How did you guys cope with that? How did you get through that?
We got quite lucky actually with the pandemic. Chicken and Blues was geared up for takeaway and delivery. So any takeaway and delivery hot food business benefited in some ways by still being able to trade with some government support on, you know, lowering of VAT and a few grants here and there. So Chicken and Blues actually didn't close at all during the pandemic. Flamingo had an 18-month delay in launching of its first site, which cost us an absolute fortune in delays. Still paying rent, still paying, you know, overhead. various building companies that were dropping their tools and not working for weeks on end, OT government guidelines, etc. So what we gained in Chicken and Blues, in some ways we lost in the delays of the Flamingo launch. When we came out the back of the pandemic, which I believe was May 21, when it all kind of started to relax a little bit more, we were ready to rock and roll with Flamingo, got off to a flyer there, and have really continued to progress with Chicken and Blues as we had been through the pandemic.
Yeah. I'd be interested, sort of, your view on Chicken and Blues and all that. It's a very competitive market, the takeaway market. How have you created a sort of, a brand and a unique selling point to separate yourself from competitors?
I think there's a number of reasons why Chicken and Blues has competed well. I would say that firstly, it ticks the box for healthy eaters as well as cheap meals, because we do a lot of barbecue chicken and healthy side dishes. Chicken and Blues is the kind of place that you can eat at 4 or 5 times a week, which a lot of our guests actually do. Whereas you'd think maybe a Big Mac from McDonald's you might have once in a blue moon when you're hungover. With Chicken and Blues, it's more of it's an everyday food. We also have the cheap meal options, like the fried wings and the things like milkshakes and stuff like that. So I think the spread, the product spread, has helped us compete. We've also taken a stance on being premium in our pricing and product quality and packaging. We're not trying to compete on price with KFC and various other fried chicken brands on the high street that you see pop up. That are selling, buckets of food and family meals for a tenner and that sort of thing. We've kept it premium. Our spend per head is strong. I'd say if you compare us to other, fast food brands, Five Guys is all about quality, premium price, and that's where we positioned ourselves with Chicken and Blues. There's not many chicken brands in the market that are positioned in the way that we are.
Yeah. I mean, interesting. It leads me on to what we were talking about before we started here. You called this your year of innovation. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I think the phases that you go through in a business, initially establishing the product and service in the first couple of years, and trying to build a fan base, we worked really hard on that. You then kind of go a bit more internal and try and systemize and make everything consistent and make your operations more kind of efficient and slick. Work in-house on your people piece, make sure that you're a great company to work for. And once you're working a hell of a lot on that stuff, sometimes innovation gets left behind. You've got your products, you've got your service, you're working so hard on internal operational efficiencies and people that you forget to actually innovate on products. So we've got to try to balance the two. This year we've got a lot of operational stuff still to go. By no means have we completed that, but we're trying to balance it now and innovate and introduce a new product. For example, next month we're launching breakfast at Chicken and Blues for the first time, which is our wraps are very popular, so we've got a really, really good quality breakfast wrap and sides option, plant-based and otherwise, on Deliveroo, collections and dine-in. So that's like our latest innovation for Chicken and Blues as an example.
Okay, interesting. We sort of, some of the key things I work on as a coach with people is finance, and you touched on that with debt, time we've touched on. The other critical one is team. Obviously in your sort of environment, getting the right team in place and the recruitment and high, traditional high turnover in that sort of industry. I mean, what qualities do you look for in employees to ensure you've got the right employees, you've got a positive work environment? How do you sort of select people?
Well, I think attitude's massive. What I would say firstly is using Chicken and Blues as an example, is that we've employed a really experienced operations manager for the group. He was at Pizza Hut for 10 years, working regionally with them. So he's come in and dropped in lots of systems, one of which is recruitment, one of which is internal growth plans for each individual member of the team, one-on-ones, and making sure the team members are happy. I mean, you spoke about churn rates being high in hospitality. They are. I mean, in the last 14 to 18 months, we haven't lost a manager. So that's excellent. I mean, a lot of our team members have worked with us for 5 or 6 years. Some have worked with us since the beginning 10 years ago. So our churn rates are really low because we do focus on being as great a company to work for as possible. In regards to what we're looking for in new recruits, willingness to learn, a passion for hospitality, and elevating the days of our guests. I mean, our company ethos is elevate your day. Essentially, we want guests to leave with a smile on their face, and it takes a team of great personalities on the front line to achieve that. Internally, we're building training programs, and I think part of it actually is understanding the individual's goals in their own lives. Quite often, we've become better at this. So we used to kind of put round pegs in square holes, as you say, trying to push people that aren't really keen to progress into management positions and putting pressure on them to do that. Whereas now, we look at the team member individually and say, right, what does this team member need in their own lives? And a good example of this, we've got a lady that works for us, has been with us for 7 years, who she's got kids, picks them up from school, so she works lunch shifts, short shifts. She's fantastic at her job. Customers love her. She's got no interest in becoming a manager or earning more money for more responsibility and more time, and that's fine. We've got other team members that are ambitious in that sense and want to have a career plan and a growth plan, and that's fine too. So it's about understanding the individual's needs, but they've all got to have the same great attitude. All the vectors have got to be pointing in the same direction, and that is to give great hospitality and have high standards on product quality. But individually, we work on their individual needs.
Okay, excellent. Just sort of taking a step back on your past and, different businesses, different parts of the world as well. For people who are watching and thinking of going into business, what would you say are some of the misconceptions about running a business?
It's a good question. I would say that one of the misconceptions that affects entrepreneurs is that business is always exciting. And actually, launching a business can be, or launching new products can be, and working on collaborations with cool brands and stuff. That's all exciting stuff. But actually, the monotony of everyday business, it can be draining and pretty stressful. And much of the time, successful founders that I've found and spoken to and have mentored me have realised that fighting off boredom and avoiding doing silly things because you see some shiny object in the distance is the art of great business, and all that glitters is not gold, as they say. And I think that those guys that just can stay focused and consistent and persistent over many, many years end up being successful. So I'll say the first thing is it's not always exciting. I mean, initially, years ago, I would think that 2 or 3 or 4 years in a business is quite a long time. I'll be looking to move it on or sell it or whatever else. And actually, another misconception that I think founders have is how long it actually takes to establish a business properly, and how much it will cost to actually launch it effectively. All these things are underestimated. And we're 10 years down with Chicken and Blues now, and really we're realizing that we're embryonic as a brand. I mean, brands that we aspire to be in our space, say Wagamama's or Nando's. I mean, you look at when they were actually established, it's 35 years ago.
Yeah.
They're seen as being relatively young in comparison to the McDonald's of this world that are 60 or 70 years old. So at 10 years old, we're like a baby. And I think a misconception from entrepreneurs is that they want success now and their big brand now. Well, see if you're still around here in 20 years' time. That's when things really start getting exciting. So yeah, I think in addressing those misconceptions daily almost is an important task for entrepreneurs, because I say stave off boredom. That's a big call.
Yeah. So when you look at 10 years and your growth that you've gone through with Chicken and Blues in particular, what would you attribute that growth to?
I think the consistency of application, really. Steve, my business partner, is a diligent, hardworking guy. Turns up every day on time. He's got his goals and his plans, and he's bled a lot of that kind of behavior into me. I used to be jumping around here, there, and everywhere in my youth. Now I know, it's crack on with the daily tasks, get things done, do good quality work, and in the end, you grow. Being patient. And I think also a bit of good fortune here and there doesn't go amiss. The old saying, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. And I think that during the pandemic, it became an opportunity for us, but we were prepared for it because we'd done 7 years of hard work before then. And we were able to bear fruits from what could have been a disaster. Ended up buying more sites as we came out of the pandemic when many people were closing. So lots of things got to come together. There's plenty of cogs in that wheel of growth, but doing the simple things well is a good place to start.
Yeah. And sort of, again, trying to help people who are looking at starting in business. You know, if you were to start again back at square one, what would you do differently?
Yeah, I think one of the main things that I wish I'd have known then, and it's an unrealistic conversation, it's totally hypothetical, but is understanding how to build a good team. Essentially, a company, any company in the world, whatever they're selling, whatever product or service they're selling, is just a group of people in an office, or these days virtual offices. And building a team is the key to having a successful company. And in those days, back at the start of my journey, I thought that an entrepreneur had to be good at everything. You know, understand finance, understand marketing, understand operations, understand everything, and just have a widespread knowledge, and doesn't need anyone to help him or her. And that I got caught short on that, because there was certain aspects of the business which actually I was rubbish at, and I should have really just gone, hold on a minute, I know what I'm good at. Let's just slot some people in around me that are really good at those other specialties, and between us all, we can grow a great company. And I think I dropped the ball a few times in my youth by just trying to spin all the plates at the same time and doing nothing that well, owed to lack of time, lack of experience, lack of knowledge. And so now, like I said about our operations manager that we've employed, back in the day, I never would have spent that money on an operations manager. I would have done that myself, and probably done it very badly, and lost a load of our good managers. So it's a good example of how maturity and experience can help you. So yeah, I think team building is vital.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Again, a lot of people that I coach, when I start coaching with them, it's letting go. They say the same thing. Oh, well, I can do the operations manager job, or this job, or that job. But actually, what we tend to work on is what we call the skill fun matrix. It's got to be something that's highly skilled, and it's got to be fun. And if it's not one of those two or both of those things, it needs to be delegated and passed on. And you know, it takes a bit of guts to actually, you know, delegate and let things go. I mean, was that a challenge you faced? Did you find it difficult to let things go?
Yeah, well, yes, I did. I must have done, because I waited long enough to do it. So I think it was partly a lack of, not to say ambition, but understanding if you want to be at the next level of size of business, there's absolutely no way you can do it. And I think had I've always retained that mentality, I never would have got past one restaurant. I'd have had my own restaurant, owner managed, do everything on the back of a fag packet, and made myself a living. And that's what, you know what, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's lots of people out there that have a small company, they run themselves, they keep it tight. When they go on holiday, they close the door for 2 weeks, and you know, that's how they run their lives. That's absolutely fine. But we're up to 150 team members now, and 5 sites, and you know, various managers, and there's absolutely no way that I could run the company without slotting in these experts in various parts of it.
And how big is your sort of management leadership team then?
We for Chicken and Blues, we have general managers of each restaurant, and we have a head of food development. We now have a head trainer that's coming in to train and systemize products, and then we have a group operations manager. It's quite weighty in regards to management for 3 sites. However, our 3 sites generate as much revenue as probably 6 sites do of a comparative brand. So yeah, I mean, the sites are generating serious revenue for their size and location. So we're able to afford to slot in some decent management in there to look after it.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for that, Josh. It's been really interesting. I'm now going to delve in a little bit more as we wrap up on some personal bits, so we can get to, you know, see underneath of who Josh Simons is. So what would you say is your favorite business related book, and what podcasts are you listening to at the moment?
I'm pleased you asked that. Book-wise, actually, I read a book off the back of doing a course during the pandemic. I enrolled on, I don't know if you've heard of a guy called Mark Ritson. He's a marketing expert who worked for LVMH and various massive global brands, and he's launched a mini MBA in marketing online, 3-month course. Absolutely transformational for me. That was to learn the theory of marketing. I never did a marketing degree, or went to college. In fact, left school at 16. But off the back of one of the modules in that program, there was a book by Peter Field and Les Binet called The Long and the Short of It, which is essentially how to manage your brand ongoing by doing different forms of advertising. Really insightful book. I'd recommend anyone that's interested in marketing or brand management to read The Long and the Short of It by Peter Field and Les Binet. In regards to podcasts, I'm an avid podcast listener or watcher. And my most recent find, which you'll probably find very interesting, Gary, is a podcast by David Novak. David Novak was the CEO of Yum Brands. Yum Brands owned KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, multi-billion-dollar business, and he's launched a podcast called How Leaders Lead, and he essentially he interviews CEOs of massive companies around the world every week about how they best lead their companies. And he's done so much in hospitality with his own background that I delve into all the hospitality ones on his podcast, and there's about 150 hours worth of content. So I've got
excellent.
A lot of content to listen to over the next few months.
There's a few miles to drive in your car listening to that.
Oh yeah, no, honestly, podcasts and audiobooks. I used to read lots of paperback books, but now I think it's audiobooks and podcasts, which I enjoy a lot more.
Okay, excellent. And last question then, Joshua, what's on your bucket list?
Well, I don't really have the kind of traditional bucket list per se of, run a marathon, go on a hot air balloon or whatever people have on their bucket list. But I think from my perspective, and it was actually another podcast that I listened to a while back from and Jesse Itzler was a guest, and he owns Marquise Jets and various other things. And he said something on this podcast which struck a chord with me. And it's basically that in your 20s, you should be trying lots of different businesses and have quite an open mind about what business you may end up going into. In your 30s, you dull down on what you're good at and become really good at it in your 30s. And then your 40s, you then capitalize on what you're good at. And I'm 41, 42 next month. So I'm kind of into my 40s now, and I feel like I'm kind of capitalizing on my knowledge. So that a bucket list for me in my 40s is to make sure I capitalize on my knowledge, like Jesse Itzler suggested. And by the age of 50, to be in a position where I'm working more for the fun of it and not the need of it. That'd be a bucket list. And secondly, or thirdly, to make sure or hope that those nearest and dearest to me, family and friends, are around to enjoy the fruits of the 30 years at that point of my labor. So health, I'd say, is the most important thing. Nothing else really matters. No point being in a big house, exiting my companies at that point, and sat around my pool and on my own.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, big bucket list. Let's hope everyone sticks around for a while.
Excellent. Yeah, and the point there you reminded me. One of the things we always talk about is your business has got to give you the life that you want. That's the key. It's your business. You drive it the way you want to.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
Well, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for your time, Joshua. I really appreciate it. It was some really interesting insights, and I'm absolutely certain people who are watching and listening to this will have learned a few things. So I really appreciate you taking your time out.
Thanks for your time, mate.
Joshua.